following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone had a wonderful Martin Luther King holiday, and thanks for joining us. Before I start the program, I'd just like to take a moment to remember our great governor, Mario Cuomo. His leadership and devotion to New York was tremendous, and we all feel his loss. Our condolences, Governor, to you and the entire Cuomo family. I'm sure right now Mario and Lou are up at the Association for a Better Heaven breakfast, looking down on us gathered here with such pride. Their spirits are definitely in the room with us this morning. There are many distinguished individuals who are here with us this morning, heads of businesses, labor, civic organizations, elected officials, community groups, civic organizations, non-for-profits, and I would be here for an hour if I started introducing everyone. But there's just a few that I just want to recognize. The Dean of our congressional delegation, Congressman Charlie Rangel, is here with us. Charlie started his career as a congressman in 1971, actually the same year that ABNY was started. He has led a long and distinguished career and has fought so hard for our city and our state. And Charlie, as you embark on your last term in Congress, we know you will continue to fight and be a strong advocate for our city and state. Thank you for your friendship, for your service, and we're so happy that you're here with us today. And Charlie, are you a follower or a leader? Charlie knows what that means. Congressman Carolyn Maloney is here with us also. Thank you, Carolyn. She fought the good fight for us in representing an important issue that was just passed and signed just a couple of weeks ago in Congress, and that is the extension of TRIA. And it's apropos that we were going to be discussing infrastructure today, and without TRIA passed, there would have been thousands of jobs lost, and our economy would have definitely taken a hit. Thank you, Carolyn, for your tremendous leadership. It also shows that when business and government work together in a bipartisan way, things can get done in Washington, believe it or not. We also are honored to have with us our old friend, Carl McCall. Carl, where are you? Thank you for being here. SUNY Chancellor. Also want to recognize two gentlemen, and their paths are crossing. Larry Schwartz, Secretary of the Governor, thank you for your tremendous efforts and work on behalf of our state, and we wish you the best of luck, Larry. Thank you. And the man who will be taking his spot, Bill Mulrow, an old friend of ours and an incredible public servant, and we wish you the best of luck, Bill, and look forward to working with you. I know that there are other members of the administration who are here with us this morning, and Governor, we congratulate you on your tremendous efforts to bring in new blood into the administration. We wish you and your team the best of luck. Thank you for being here this morning. During the long history of our city and state, there has been one common thread running throughout, and that is the strength of our leaders, in particular when leadership is needed the most. When New York is in crisis, whether a result of Mother Nature, external threats, or self-inflicted, and our lights go out, we've been always blessed with great leaders who have stepped forward with flashlights in hand to light the path for all of us. We are very fortunate for the leadership of Governor Andrew Cuomo, who has shined a light on the critical issues that have challenged our state, including budgets, marriage equality, gun control, infrastructure investment, economic development and job growth, resiliency, and so much more. Since assuming office in 2011, Governor Cuomo has been one of the private sector's greatest partners in making New York a more business-friendly state. He understands the important roles that state government plays in the strengthening of our economy and creating an environment that encourages growth. Governor Cuomo started bringing fiscal responsibility back to Albany, passing 4 consecutive on-time budgets for the first time in 40 years. And because he kept spending in line, he's been able to cut taxes. Thanks to the governor, New York now has the lowest middle-income tax rate since 1953, the lowest corporate income tax rate since 1968, and the lowest manufacturing tax rate since 1917. You can applaud on that one, too. All 3 rating agencies have taken notice of the progress that we have made in our state. Fitch, Moody's, and S&P have now given the state its highest credit rating in over 40 years. The governor recognizes that infrastructure is the core of any economic engine. He has made great commitments to rebuilding and strengthening infrastructure across the entire state. He has launched a $25 billion statewide recovery strategy aimed at transforming New York's infrastructure, transportation networks, and coastal protection systems. He has also created New York Works Task Force, composed of leading professionals charged with coordinating and spending $174 billion in existing capital investment dollars. After decades of delay, Governor Cuomo is finally rebuilding the new New York Bridge, replacing the Tappan Zee, saving the state $1 billion through innovative design-build process. Governor, your vision and leadership have been invaluable to our city and state, and we are grateful for your ongoing commitment to attracting and retaining jobs, keeping our fiscal house in order, protecting and expanding economic drivers of New York, and making the critical infrastructure investments we need to ensure that our Empire State remains globally competitive. Governor, as you light the path forward, we stand behind you with our flashlights, ready to help in any way we can. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First to Bill Rudin and ABNY, what a really phenomenal job this organization does. Let's give Bill a round of applause. And I think he's right. I think his father and my father are in the same place, and I think they're probably together right now, looking down and listening to Bill's speech and listening to my speech, and they'll be doing their running commentary. And frankly, I'm glad I'm not hearing it. They had a very long relationship. They were very fond of each other. They were together when New York was going through really tough times. And if you want to talk about 2 people who defined leadership and defined partnership and defined coming together and finding commonalities to get through tough times, it was Lou Rudin and Mario Cuomo, and their lesson of leadership. We have a lot to learn from, especially during these difficult days. So it's my pleasure to be with all of you today. I have my team members here. You heard about Larry Schwartz and Bill Mulrow. We're also joined by Tom Prendergast, who runs the MTA. Give him a round of applause. We have Pat Foy, who runs the Port Authority, who's here. And we have Joan McDonald, who's the Department of Transportation head. There are a room full of people who could be acknowledged, but I was sitting next to one gentleman who taught me so much about leadership, and he's here, Mayor David Dinkins. Let's give him a round of applause. Now, this is a new year. Happy New Year to everyone. It's the beginning of the year, and it's traditional at the beginning of the year, the governmental leaders, the executives, lay out a vision for that government for the year. The President does the State of the Union address. Governors do the State of the State address, which is a large overview of what the plans are for the year. This is going to be my 5th State of the State. And hopefully you learn a little something every time as you go along. And this is probably the most robust State of the State that I've done. We have close to 100 significant proposals to try to get done with the legislature. And as you heard, we've had a new level of functionality with the legislature. We passed 4 budgets in a row. This was a legislature which historically was very slow to get anything done. We've been moving quite well. We want to now test that new capacity by actually putting on a more ambitious agenda. So we do the State of the State address tomorrow, but there were so many items that really deserve detailed discussion that it didn't fit in the State of the State. So we're taking a few pieces, and I'd like to discuss them separately. And one of them is the infrastructure transportation plan, primarily for downstate New York. Because the truth is, it's been overlooked for too long. When government runs into a period of dysfunction, or when government runs into a period of stretched resources, the first thing to go is the construction budget, or the reconstruction budget, or the maintenance budget. And in many ways, that's the last thing that should be sacrificed, because that's what keeps you competitive. And this year, I want to catch up for a lot of the work that we haven't done over the past few years, and I want to move forward. So we have a slideshow presentation for you today that will run through our plans relatively quickly, I hope. What makes New York, New York? It's our spirit. It's our audacity, our ambition, our aggressiveness, which is a positive the way we do it. We attract and we move people, and we do it quickly, and we do it safely, and we do it inexpensively. And New York, historically, is a built environment. This is a built space. And we build bigger, we build faster, we build stronger than anyone else, and we always have. There was no building challenge that we shied away from. They would say, well, that's never been done before, and we would say, great, then we should do that, right? Brooklyn Bridge, Verrazano Bridge, Empire State Building, national depression, national recession. People don't know what's going to happen with the economy. We say, let's build the tallest building ever, right when the economy is at its lowest point. 500 miles of underground subway tunnels, which many engineers said were impossible to build when we did it. A 60-mile aqueduct system to get water down from the mid-Hudson. That's the New York spirit. That's the spirit that built New York, and that's the spirit that will keep New York the #1 destination. The transportation system, then, is the circulatory system that makes it all work. And that's what we want to rebuild over these next few years, starting with our airports, because that is the gateway to business. And we really have not kept pace with the rest of the world and our competitors. You look at any report, it will talk about how the New York airports sorely lag in terms of development. The Vice President said, if I blindfolded you and took you to LaGuardia Airport in New York, you must think I must be in some third world country. Not the most warm and fuzzy comment ever made, but instructive nonetheless. New York is a world-class location, but our airports are outdated and lag behind our competitors. There are some phenomenal developments in airports around the world, and not only the usual suspects, but South Korea, Hong Kong, the Dubai airport is truly a phenomenon. So this fall, we launched a design competition to modernize our region's airports, starting with JFK and LaGuardia. And we asked the designers to be creative. The sky's the limit. Start with a blank piece of paper and just give us a vision for the most competitive airport on the planet. That was the charge. And we got some really exciting designs back, 11 between JFK and LaGuardia. For LaGuardia, the main problems are limited public transportation, it's a bad use of space, and very few what we would now call modern amenities. The proposals that came back were really breathtaking. An entirely redesigned terminal, use of the Marine Air Terminal in a much more efficient and incorporated manner with the airport operations, a hotel and business center located at LaGuardia, so people who just want to come to the airport, transact business, they could do exactly that. Personal rapid transit mover, so people could be moved across the airport in a relatively short period of time, and state-of-the-art dining and amenities. I'm partial to Peter Luger, and that's why we put that in the sign, but that's only illustrative, and as governor, you get a few prerogatives, and that's the extent of mine. Regional ferry access to get you to the airport, and something that we're going to do, which I'm very excited about, which is a new train service that will get to LaGuardia. You can't get to LaGuardia by train today, and that really is inexcusable, and that we're going to change over the next several years. We will construct an air train that will connect with the Route 7 subway line and the Long Island Railroad at Willets Point, and will take you into LaGuardia. That is about a 1.5 mile construction. It will run along the Grand Central Parkway in an area that we believe won't create an undue burden to any of the neighboring structures, and connect a one ride from the subway system or the Long Island Railroad to LaGuardia, which is truly long overdue. The final design submissions for LaGuardia, we're looking for a high-speed ferry terminal that goes from LaGuardia to Manhattan, the redesign of the Marine Air Terminal and including it into LaGuardia Airport, a hotel business center, retail shopping, personal rapid transit, and the rail access that we are going to be building in any event. JFK is in a similar situation, probably worse. Inefficient cargo facilities, difficult access between terminals, limited expansion ability. Again, we've gotten all sorts of exciting proposals that have come in. Some have re-envisioned the entire airport with ferry lines, train services, faster connections, etc. All include better access to public transportation, because that is going to be the key, a centralized hub at JFK, a new hub interior, and our requirements for the final design will be a world-class hotel, again, transportation ease, accessible parking, and improved mass transit. Long-term, we're looking at possibilities for redesigning the airways, the landing ways, which requires federal approval, but I'm sure with Congressman Rangel and Congresswoman Maloney, we'll get that in a matter of weeks, if even weeks. given their ability to do their job the way only they can do it. But longer term, actually repositioning the runways would make a significant difference. Today we're going to appoint a committee. The committee's job is to review the proposals that have come in and take them to the next level, which will be the final submission. They will meet with the bidders who have provided bids thus far, talk about the requirements, and also coordinate these bids with any outstanding RFPs that the Port Authority or MTA have outstanding to find out how to do this in the fastest way possible. Dan Tishman, who you all know, who is one of the premier builders on the planet, in my opinion, especially in this regard, has agreed to be chairman. And I guarantee the people of this state that he's going to be worth every penny of the dollar he gets paid to do this job. And we thank him very much for doing it. Query. How many New York airports serve the New York City region? Who has the answer? Carolyn Maloney. New York City region, that was the kicker in the question. You were going to add Teterboro. 4 New York City airports, Stewart and Republic. We have never really planned an airport system. We talk about JFK as JFK, LaGuardia as LaGuardia, but we have Stewart Airport and we have Republic Airport. Republic Airport is on Long Island, Stewart is in the Mid-Hudson, and we've never incorporated them into a system before. And we want to do that now. We want to transform Stewart into a cargo destination to meet the growing demands we have for cargo. Stewart has one of the longest runways in the Northeast because it was a former military base. It has probably one of the best accesses to major transportation. It's right off the thruway, New York State Thruway, and it's right off 84. We're going to make the land surrounding Stewart Airport a tax-free zone. So it will basically be a free trade zone in New York State. There'll be no New York State taxes in the geographic area around Stewart. So for cargo companies that want to locate at Stewart Airport, bring goods in, bring goods out, there'll be no New York State taxation. We also want to take the current cargo that comes into JFK and move that cargo shipment up to Stewart, freeing up more space at JFK, getting the traffic out of New York City and moving it towards upstate New York. Republic Airport is the same thing. It's on Long Island. It has easy access to major roads. We're also going to make the land around Republic Airport a tax-free zone, what we call a startup zone, no state taxes. So any business that locates there will pay no state taxes, and we believe it'll be an economic incentive. The Republic Airport is currently owned by the Department of Transportation. We want to transfer it to a private operator. You can run commuter flights to Long Island. If you're going to Long Island on business, you don't have to land at JFK or LaGuardia. You can fly right to Long Island, and also make it a private plane operating terminal. So you don't have to leave the state to access a private plane. You can do it right at Republic. Second, we want to expand public transportation. 8.5 million people per day is served by the MTA. That's why Tom Prendergast gets the big bucks. 70% of all subway riders in the nation ride MTA. 40% of all rail, 20% of all bus. And the use of the public transportation is growing, and it should grow. We're looking at a 15% increase by 2030. To keep pace with that, we're going to have to keep pace with investing and building the MTA. We're building 900 new subway cars, which will be a significant update of the entire fleet, 1,800 next-generation buses, most manufactured in upstate New York, and most using clean energy. Complete the real-time tracking system, 2/3 have it now. signal improvements to keep the system safer than ever before, and expanding bus rapid transit, which is a big part of the future, and we'll be doing that within the 5 boroughs. Ensure the completion of the 2nd Avenue subway, and link Metro North from Westchester to Penn Station, and construct 4 new stations in the Bronx. We've watched the outer boroughs develop. We've watched Brooklyn develop. We've watched Queens develop. This would really take the development of the Bronx to a new level, because you'd have much better access coming from the Bronx, Co-op City, Morris Park, Parkchester, and Hunts Point. MTA is also working on resiliency post-Hurricane Sandy. As we've discussed before, Hurricane Sandy was an eye-opener, should be an eye-opener for everyone in this room. I don't believe it was the last. I believe it was the first of a beginning of series of extreme weather events. It was frightening how ill-prepared we were to deal with Hurricane Sandy. And you could see a cataclysmic event in this city by weather if we're not ready for it. And the MTA is working on overtime to make the kind of adaptations we need to deal with that. The Long Island Railroad volume is increasing, and we want it to increase. You look at the development pattern, the concentric circles, it's moving out further and further. People are commuting from now the mid-Hudson, from the tip of Long Island. That's fairly common. We need more park and rides on both the north and the east, and we're going to be building that at the Ronkonkoma hub on Long Island, the Nassau hub, and north in Tarrytown, extensive park and ride facilities to get people on the train. In terms of infrastructure, we're going to continue upgrading our infrastructure statewide. We're going to invest in the thruway to keep the tolls constant on the thruway, so there won't be a toll increase, because we want that traffic and we want that volume to continue. And we will also be investing in the construction of the Tappan Zee Bridge to keep that toll down when the new bridge is constructed. Downstate New York, we have a very aggressive reconstruction schedule. Kosciuszko, the Hutchinson, Hunts Point Bridges, Route 10, Atlantic Avenue corridor. High-speed ferry is an area that I believe we can do a lot more with if we take the time and we make the investment. Europe has maximized this mode of transportation. They enjoy it. It's nicer than sitting in a car. Some people think it's nicer than sitting in a train. And it has great potential for New York. Sometimes the initial operation requires a subsidy, but I think long-term it's worth it. New York is a harbor town. It's what made us in the first place. If you look at the distances by water, they're all relatively close. That's what worked for us in the beginning, and I think it's going to pose an interesting alternative to develop as we go forward. If you're talking about infrastructure, roads, bridges, et cetera, we have to shift to broadband, which is really the new infrastructure. Eisenhower created the highway grid that developed the nation. There's no doubt that broadband is going to be the grid that is going to develop the nation and the state moving forward. It is amazing how many businesses and homes don't have access to high-speed broadband in New York. 500,000 homes, 4,000 businesses. If you don't have access to high-speed broadband, you can't locate a modern-day business there, period. And we have to get this grid completed, and we're going to make the largest single investment by the state ever made, $500 million, matched by $500 million in private sector for a $1 billion expansion of the broadband grid. How are we going to do this all? Something called design build. Design build changes the way government builds fundamentally. When you would talk about a government construction project, people would say, here we go. It's going to be late, it's going to be expensive, because many times it was. The state was notorious for slow construction projects. The reason is the state practice was to separate the design and the construction. The state designed in-house all the drawings with in-house state personnel, sent out the drawings, the bidders bid on the state drawings and gave a price. And then what happened is you went forward with the project, and there was a constant conflict between the people who made the drawings and the people who were building pursuant to the drawings. And it was very expensive, and it was very time-consuming. For the first time ever, we have combined the designing and the building in one function, and the state doesn't do it. We contract out all the design, all the architecture, and then the construction pursuant to that design. We did that with the Tappan Zee Bridge. We saved $1 billion on the construction of the Tappan Zee Bridge. And you want to talk about timing. From the day we announced we were going to build the Tappan Zee Bridge to the day we broke ground was 1 year. 1 year, which is lightning. So when you hear construction and you hear government and you hear delays, it does not have to be that way. You know, it doesn't say in the Bible every government project must be slow and expensive. And the Tappan Zee is a testament to that, because the Tappan Zee is a bridge across the Hudson River, which is probably the most environmentally sensitive river in the country. It was a very difficult project, but we got it done, and right now we are on time. We're actually ahead of schedule, and we are under budget. And we're going to stay that way if I have to go out there with a screwdriver and a hammer myself. The cutting through the red tape, though, and getting these projects done on time is critical. We want to take that design-build approach, and we want to extend it all across the state government. The last question is always the last question as New Yorkers. How much will this cost me? It is the New Yorkers' question. All the costs will be from existing state resources, what we call bank settlement funds. We had a one-time infusion of cash because of large settlements, thanks to the good law enforcement in New York. But between the bank settlement funds, the state budget, existing MTA and Port Authority budgets, we can cover the cost of this construction. Much of the airport cost will come from P3s, partnerships that will finance the construction with a back-end profit. Overall, as you heard from Bill, what we did in the past 4 years, what I want to keep doing is I want to keep lowering taxes. Why? Because the engine for the entire city is a strong private sector economy. We need businesses coming in, we need businesses growing. That creates jobs, that creates a tax base. Nothing works without that. And for too many years, New York had a reputation as an anti-business state. Taxes keep going up, regulations keep going up. They thought that we were torturing business. And we did, frankly, have what I call a hangover New York arrogance. You know, we just assumed business would be here no matter what. And whatever we did to business, they would stay in New York State because we were New York. Where else were they going to go? Well, there actually are other states that they can go to. If you look at a map, you will see shapes to the west of New York, little rectangles, squares, some little squiggly shapes. Those are called other states. And if you torture people enough and you torture business enough, they will go to those other places. They are inhabitable. They're not New York, but people can live there, and they have shown that they will move there. So we have to change our attitude, and we have to change the reality, and we have to change our perception, which is we are pro-growth, we are pro-business, we want them here, we want to work with you, and that's exactly what we've been doing, not just in words, but in reality, we have been lowering taxes dramatically across the board, and we will continue to. Last year, lowest middle-class tax rate since 1953, lowest corporate tax since 1968, lowest manufacturing tax since 1917. This year, if I have my way with the legislature, we're going to do a property tax cut. You don't feel it in New York City, but outside of New York City, the property tax is the crusher. This state, the #1 tax in New York is not an income tax. It's the property tax. And it is the #1 tax paid by business in this state. We want to cut property taxes, and we want to cut the small business income tax from 6.5 to 2.5%, which would be the lowest small business tax in over 100 years in the state of New York. And we want to get that done this year. This quote says it all to me. New York is in an international competition for the best destination to live, work, and play. Either you are moving forward or you are falling behind. It's been too long since New York was moving forward at the pace that New York should be moving forward. And we're going to correct that this year. If we keep lowering taxes, growing business, empowering individuals, that's what made New York, New York, and that's what will make New York a better New York going forward. Thank you very much for listening.
Great. We're going to do You covered me before by not by introducing our esteemed Mayor Dinkins. I forgot he was on my notes, and I just went over. But David, thank you for being here, and we have also several of our district attorneys here. So thank you for all joining us. The governor has agreed to answer a few questions from the audience. So yes, sir, in the back right there. There's a microphone right behind you.
Thank you. Hi, Governor. Steve Sigmund from Global Gateway Alliance. First of all, thank you for the announcement on LaGuardia one-seat ride. We've been calling for it for some time, and it's sorely needed. You talk a little bit about the airport plan and the conceptual designs, and in particular, how those designs will protect the significant investments that the airlines and the Port Authority have already made in the airport infrastructure and the building that's going on now.
Yeah. It's a good question, and that's the nature of the beast when you are redesigning or rebuilding an airport. It's not that we're building a new airport and we start with a vacant piece of land. The airport has to continue to operate while we're building it, and several terminals have just made significant investments in new terminals in those areas. So the challenge for the committee that I mentioned is, how do you coordinate that? How do you take the new designs, make these major improvements, coordinate it with the recent investments that have been made by terminals and the current RFPs that are out there? Port Authority has issued RFPs, the MTA has issued RFPs, and how do we use those RFPs as part of this process? But it is challenging, and it is a different kind of development, because you have to take the airport as a given, keep it operating, but yet do the redevelopment and do it quickly. You know, I'm of a different headset. The government headset, when it goes to build, is you start and you finish when you finish. You know, there's no real incentive to finish a government project. As a matter of fact, there's a disincentive to finish a government project, because then all the government employees who are managing the project are now out of a job. We got to the state capitol. It was under renovation for something like 9 years. One of my first meetings, I said, well, when do we finish the renovation? Scaffolding, dust, hammers, dirt. He said, well, you know, another 10 to 12 years, and we should have it wrapped up. I said, yeah. We finished in 2 years, actually. So it can be done, but that's what's going to have to happen here. You're going to have to coordinate it at the same time. And it is going to be challenging. That's why the committee and Dan Tishman, et cetera, John Zuccotti, who's here, that's why we needed some really superb individuals to handle the task, and I think we have them.
Governor, I'm going to ask the next question. On the AirTran you were talking about before, can you give us a little bit more details when it's going to be operational? What's the timeline?
I didn't think you got a question. I thought that was in the rules. Moderator does not get a question.
Chairman's prerogative.
The chairman's prerogative. I never heard that. You had that prerogative. We just are in the initial planning phases of it. The good news is I don't believe we're going to have any significant siting issues. You know, where you could get really slowed down is if you have a major siting problem. I don't think because of this location, it runs basically along the Grand Central Parkway. It's basically an industrial area. You're not talking about neighborhoods, et cetera. I don't think we should have a major problem there. But at this point, I would not venture a guess as to timing unless Tom Prendergast wants to really go out there with a bold, right? No, huh? Yeah. That's why he's smart. We will have, we need a couple of months to work up the design and then have some real estimates about how long it's going to take.
Okay. Next question. Carol Kellerman.
Good morning, Governor. Carol Kellerman from Citizens Budget Commission. Governor, you've indicated that you plan to continue lowering taxes and that you can do that within existing resources, presumably by continuing to keep state spending below the 2% growth cap that you have adhered to in your first administration. Is that in fact your plan? And if so, how do you propose to keep the pressure on government agencies to stay so below that cap for such a long period of time?
The short answer is yes, and the same way we have for the past 4 years. What Carol's question is getting at is this. The state spending was out of control for many, many years. The state spending over the past 50 years outpaced the growth in personal income. So think about that. The state was spending at a higher rate than the people in the state were earning money. You wouldn't think that's possible, but it actually happened. So the state was spending 6% more, 8% more, 10% more every year. The education and Medicaid budgets, which is the bulk of the state spending, every year it went up 10%. Didn't matter what the economy was doing. Those two budgets were going up. Those two budgets are the most heavily lobbied budgets with the most sophisticated political infrastructure, and those budgets just kept going up. They didn't care where the economy was. They didn't care how much money you were making. That education budget was going up 10%. I said year one, 4 years ago, we're going to get control of the costs, and we're going to come up with indexes that index the growth of the state budget to the growth in personal income, basically. So depending on what happens with the economy, the inflation, the personal income growth, that will dictate the budget. And that is what we did, lo and behold. And then on top of that, we came up with a 2% spending cap, which says whatever happens, we're not going to exceed 2% growth per year. Nobody believed us. They didn't believe it was possible. We did it the first year, and people said, well, you just got lucky, or it was a mistake, or something happened, lightning. We did it year 2, year 3, year 4, and we're going to do it year 5. And I think, Carol, it's actually gotten easier because it is a given. The legislature knows I'm not going over 2%, period. And we've changed the budget from an arbitrary political who you know, who had the best lobbyist, who ran the most TV commercials, to an indexed formula that is indexed to growth. So we're going to keep doing it the way we've been doing it.
Last question. Gentleman, oh, it's Jay Kriegel. The ABNY breakfast is not complete without a question from Jay Kriegel.
Thank you, Governor, especially for design build, Dan Tishman and Bill Mulrow. Great additions to the state. Sorry you didn't mention Earl Bridges this year in the trivia question, but I wonder if you'll accept a question on the broadest infrastructure of the state, education. You've been a great supporter of charter schools, which are very important to many of us, and we're deeply grateful for that. I wonder if you'd talk a little about how you see it playing into the future.
Yeah, I think Jay, and by the way, Rick Cotton has also joined my team. I just noticed him, former counsel to NBC, and a really extraordinary individual and a great addition to state government. I'd like to recognize Rick Cotton. Education, to me, is the single most important function that the state performs, is education funding and education regulation, and it probably has been the single greatest failure of the state in many ways. We spend more money per student than any state in the United States. More money per student than any state in the United States. We are decidedly in the middle of the pack in terms of results. The most sophisticated lobbying, politicking is done around the education budget. And the answer to education has always been the same. More money, more money, more money. Raise the education budget, raise the education budget, raise the education budget. And we have. And you know what it's gotten us? A larger and larger bureaucracy and higher salaries for the people who work in the education industry. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that the education system and the education programs are about the students, not about the bureaucracy. We didn't go into the education business to grow a big education system. We went into the education business to educate children and to help children. And somewhere along the way, we lost that. And it's focused more on the bureaucracy. And make no mistake, that is the sophisticated political machine in Albany. Largest political contributions, the education industry. So, we're spending more money. We spent money that we didn't have. Our spending is higher than any other state, and our results are de minimis. We have failing schools in New York. We grade schools. We have about 178 failing schools. More than half, about half, have been failing for over 10 years. 250,000 students have gone through failing New York schools, while the government did nothing about them. Think about it. You want to talk about a damning commentary. 250,000 students went through failing schools, and we did nothing. Why? Because the answer to the failing school is hard. What do? Maybe somebody would lose a job. God forbid. And that can never happen. So we just keep the system as it is. I have at the top of my agenda to reform the education system. The simple device that I want to put in is something called the teacher evaluation system. Find out what teachers are doing well, find out what teachers are not doing well. The teachers who are doing well, incentivize and give them bonuses, so there's an incentive to perform well. The teachers who are not performing well, get them the help they need to actually do better, teacher improvement plans, work with them. And the teachers who really should be in a different occupation, then they should be in a different occupation. Or a teacher who abuses a child should be out of the classroom. Or a teacher who, that's... I love teachers. My mother was a school teacher. And I respect the profession, but we have to get the orientation and the priority back to the students and not the system. And that's what we're going to try to do this legislative year.
Thank you, Governor, for choosing ABNY to talk about these important issues. We appreciate it. We know you've got a very busy schedule with your State of the State tomorrow, and we look forward to working with you and helping you in any way we can. Thank you all for coming. We have Carmen Farina next on Thursday, and then Controller Scott Stringer on Monday. We've got a very busy week, but thank you all for coming, and back to work, and let's keep going.